This is what you need to know about the ASP.NET Core MVC architecture. ASP.NET Core MVC is a framework for building web applications using .NET. MVC stands for Model View Controller. These are the three main parts of an ASP.NET Core MVC app. Models hold the data of your app. Views are the pages the user sees, and controllers handle the user's requests and determine what pages to show and what data is needed. Each of these parts has its own role, separate from the others, and together they form a complete web application. Fun fact, Stack Overflow is built with C# and uses ASP.NET Core MVC as the framework. Let's start with models, which are stored in the models folder. This is where you define the shape of your application data. For example, if you're building a finance app, you might have an expense model. Here's a basic model class. When we connect our project to a database later on, the model will represent a table and each property in the class will correspond to a column in that table. Depending on the type of data you want your model to store, you define the appropriate data type for each property, whether it's an integer, a string, date, time, or something else. An important thing to know when creating models is that you can also add validation rules using data annotations. These are simple attributes that ensure users enter valid data. If a user forgets to enter a title, the app will show an error message because the property is marked as required. Or if the user enters an amount outside the allowed range, they'll see a validation error again. Validation helps keep your data clean and correct, and it's super simple to use. Now let's find out what controllers do by looking at the controllers folder. Controllers are a key part of the MVC framework. Simply put, they are classes that handle requests from the views, interact with the data or models of your app, and return the appropriate response. You'll see a file called home controller. This file has a few simple methods like index and privacy. Each method returns a view, which is a page the user will see. So how does this work? When someone visits your app.com, the URL of your app /home/privacy, the controller directs that request to the privacy method, which runs and returns a view. The view is chosen by going to the views folder, then to the folder that matches the controller's name, in this case home, and finally to the view file with the same name as the method, privacy.cshtml. As you build your app, you'll create new controllers for the major parts of your app. For example, one for handling expenses, one for users, one for admin features. Since we mentioned how requests are directed in our app, let's go a bit deeper and talk about routing, what it actually is. Routing is responsible for matching incoming HTTP requests to the correct code in your app. MVC apps can use conventional routing, attribute routing, or a combination of both. Conventional routes are defined globally in the project by specifying routing conventions, typically in the program.cs file, where the request middleware pipeline is configured. A default route is defined with placeholders for the controller name, the action method, and an optional ID parameter indicated by the question mark. This default route determines where we get redirected when we run the project, and it also sets the routing pattern for the entire app. For example, if we enter the controller name home in the URL followed by privacy, the name of the action method will be routed to the privacy method in home controller. If we change the order of the parameters in the default route pattern, say putting the action before the controller, that change will also affect how URLs must be structured when a request is made to our app. With attribute routing, routes are defined directly on controllers and actions instead of being set globally. The upsides here are that routes are defined next to the code they affect, making them easier to understand, and you can apply multiple routes to the same action, but the downside is that the routing rules are scattered across multiple files instead of being in one place. And here's something important to remember. In MVC apps, you don't have to choose between conventional and attribute routing, you can use both. However, the cleanest way in most cases is conventional routing. The third major component of our app is the views. So let's take a look at the views folder. Views are your front end, the pages that are shown in the browser. In ASP.NET Core, we use a file format called CSHTML, which lets you mix regular HTML with C# code, which is also called the Razor syntax. Here's a quick example. In this line, we use the @ symbol to embed C# variables into our code. Here we're displaying the value of the view data dictionary. You can also also write C# code inside a block like this, and this block sets a value that can be used later in the view. If you need my direct help with anything we talked about, you can find me inside the .NET squad, link is below if you want to check it out. Otherwise, to go deeper into ASP.NET Core MVC, I've made a full-length beginner tutorial, which should be on the screen right now, so go ahead and click on it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.